Now, joining us on the program, very pleased to have with us from Instapundit.com, law professor Glenn Reynolds. How are you, Glenn?
Hi, great to be here.
It's
Great
having you.
I'm excited.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the program, giving up a little bit of your Friday evening to talk about a very important case, the case of Brian Aitken in New Jersey. This guy, and you recently had the opportunity to talk with Brian's attorney, Evan Knappen, about this case. What are your thoughts? I mean, we've talked about this enough on the program. We probably don't need to get into a lot of background, but I mean, what's your take after hearing what has happened to Brian Aitken?
Well, I think there are a couple of lessons to take from this. I mean, the first is that New Jersey gun law is seriously screwed up, and it operates on the presumption that if you own a gun, you are a criminal, and it is basically always up to you to prove otherwise to the satisfaction of the authorities. I frankly don't see how the law as it exists now could withstand Second Amendment challenges, and maybe it'll get one. That's a separate story.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing here is it really suggests to me that one of the things that ought to be on the agenda for the next Congress is some civil rights legislation protecting gun owners' rights from what amounts to persecution by state officials. And in fact, there's really an analogy here because we have some federal civil rights laws that allow you to sue and indeed allow criminal prosecution of state officials for depriving people of their federal constitutional rights. They come from the period after the Civil War, when after losing the war, as Reconstruction ended, the sort of Confederate authorities regrouped, took their state governments back over, and started trying to basically cram black people into a box that looked as much like slavery as they could manage. And in fact, one of the things they did was disarm them. We passed some civil rights statutes then, which were ultimately instrumental in helping to control and redress those kinds of behaviors. Well, now you've had another kind of a revolution in this country with the Second Amendment finally being recognized by the Supreme Court as protecting an individual right. And you are seeing pledges of massive resistance from a lot of state and local officials, people who basically take the position that they are not going to pay any attention to what the U.S. Constitution says. They're just going to go after gun owners as much as they can. And I think that those people need to have the hammer brought down on them exactly as segregationists and Confederate sympathizers had the hammer brought down on them when they were trying to deprive people of civil rights.
And, the comparisons, I think, are very apt because you look at some of the jurisdictions that are most egregious in what they're doing here. Washington, D.C. and Chicago, which had their handgun bans overturned, they have gone back and they have crafted new laws that, again, require you to, for instance, get a range time, but there are no ranges where you can go get training.
Right. They don't allow ranges in Chicago, but they require range time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Kafkaesque. And really, what I want to add, the federal laws in this should be really strict. And if we had a Justice Department that cared about protecting constitutional rights, which we do not, we would be seeing actual Justice Department efforts to enforce constitutional rights here already. But I think that needs to be the way of the future. And I really want to see, at the federal level, some investigations, some hearings, and some extremely pointed and awkward questions asked of state officials by the new Congress in the coming year. The other thing is, I think at the state level, we need more action here. New Jersey is a state that's not likely to be especially gun-friendly, but it's probably a lot more gun-friendly now than it was in 2008 when John Corzine got the law amended to make it much stricter. I mean, they actually treat, if you have a gun and they decide it's illegal, they treat that as if you had committed a crime with that gun. You might as well shoot somebody with your illegal gun, because the sentence is just as bad.
Or worse. That's what's so appalling to this, appalling to me in these cases, is that I've seen stories of violent criminals that have actually gotten less jail time for crimes of violence that were committed with the illegal use of a firearm than what Brian Aitken received, 7 years for, again, having his firearms locked away, unloaded in the trunk of his car while he was moving. It's just Kafkaesque is a wonderful word to use here. It's either Kafkaesque or it is Fellini-esque, I guess, depending on where you want to go with this. Now, the other aspect to the story is that you've got the appeal going on, but Brian Aitken's family has also asked Governor Christie to consider this matter, and Governor Christie actually addressed this for the first time. We've got a clip. I don't know. Have you had a chance to see this clip of Governor Christie?
I've read a report, but I haven't seen the clip.
All right. Well, let's let you watch this for a second. This is Governor Chris Christie responding to a question about the Brian Aitken case.
Representatives on behalf of Mr. Aitken have filed a formal request for pardon. My counsel's office has put together documents, and I've begun the review of the record and those documents, and I would suspect that I'll be in a position to make a decision on whether or not I'll intervene prior to Christmas.
All right, so Governor Christie says he expects to say whether or not he will either grant clemency, grant a pardon to Brian Aitken before Christmas. Governor Christie, Glenn, he's become a conservative superstar. There's really no other word for it. I think everybody who is a conservative has enjoyed watching Chris Christie take the unions to task, and when the teacher stood up and tried to present a sob story about all of the budget cuts that were coming, and Chris Christie said, well, look, you don't have to be a teacher. You can do something else if it's really that bad for you. A lot of conservatives went, yeah. What happens, do you think, to Governor Christie's popularity now that he's having to confront a cultural issue really for the first time in his governorship?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, first of all, New Jersey is not really a place that is anti-gun. Just ask Tony Soprano. New Jersey is a place that is only against guns in the hands of the law-abiding, right? I mean, that's basically how it works. So it's kind of Chris Christie is a terrific politician. He's been a strong conservative politician in a lot of ways. He has never been an especially great gun rights politician. And it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. If I were his political advisor, I would be telling him what political advisors tell every governor in a high-profile clemency case, which is you need to be really careful you get this right. If you pardon somebody and they go out and commit a crime, you're really screwed on the national stage from then on. So they're going to be very careful, and that's understandable. On the other hand, this really seems to be just an outrageous case. And it does, it's tailor-made for a case of executive clemency. And I think if he reviews the facts as they've been reported up to now, I really don't see how he cannot do something about this.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the facts as they have been laid out are just extraordinary. Well, I guess we're going to continue to follow this, and hopefully we will have news before Christmas to report. When we learn the governor's decision, I'd love to have you back on the program, talk a little bit more about it. Can you do it?
Oh, we'll see. I'll try.
All right. Hopefully we can do it. And thanks again for your time tonight, Glenn. Have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks for having me.